In a small village at the edge of a quiet valley, there was an old man who did something no one understood. Every morning, before the sun fully rose, he walked to the edge of the village and planted a tree. Not flowers, not crops, not anything the village could eat or sell. Just trees, and not just any trees. Oak trees. Trees that take 40, sometimes 60 years to grow tall enough to give shade. The neighbors watched him and shook their heads. "Elias," they said, "you are an old man. You will never sit under those trees. Why do you waste your mornings?" Elias would smile, say nothing, and keep digging. Elias had lived in that village his whole life. He had seen children grow into parents. He had seen parents grow into grandparents. He had buried friends. He had watched the river change course twice. And in all those years, he had noticed something that troubled him deeply. The village had no shade. In summer, the heat was unbearable. Children couldn't play outside. Old people suffered. Markets closed early. Life shrank, and everyone complained. But no one planted, because planting oak trees made no sense. You plant what you harvest. You build what you use. You invest where you see return. That was the logic of the village. But Elias had a different logic. "Someone planted the tree I grew up under," he thought one afternoon, resting his old hands on his shovel. "I never met that person. I never thanked them. But their decision, made long before I was born, gave me shade on the hottest days of my childhood. What do I owe that stranger? Everything." So Elias planted, not because anyone asked him to, not because anyone thanked him, not because he would ever benefit. He planted because he understood something most people spend their whole lives missing. The most important things we do are never for ourselves. The teacher who stays late with a struggling student will never know the life that student goes on to build. The father who reads to his child every night will never see the book his child writes 30 years later. The old man who plants trees will never sit in their shade. But the shade will come. It always comes. Elias knew this. And so every morning, before the sun rose, he dug. Some mornings, his back hurt. Some mornings, the ground was hard. Some mornings, the young men of the village passed by and laughed quietly among themselves. He dug anyway. Years passed. Elias grew older. His steps slowed. His mornings became shorter. And then, one summer, he didn't come out at all. The village mourned him quietly. He had no great fortune to leave behind. No title, no monument. Just a small house, a worn shovel, and a long row of young oak trees at the edge of the valley. Still too small to give shade. The village forgot about Elias. Life continued. 20 years later, the summer came again. Brutal, relentless. The kind that closes markets and empties streets. But something was different at the edge of the village. A long row of oak trees, now tall and wide, stretched across the hillside. Children played beneath them. Old women rested in their shadow. Merchants set up tables under their branches. Nobody remembered who planted them. Nobody knew his name. But every single person in that village, on the hottest day of that summer, sat in the shade of a man who had been dead for 20 years. A man who never asked to be remembered. A man who only asked himself one question. What do I owe the stranger who planted the tree I grew up under? Here is what Elias understood that most people never do. We live in a world built entirely by people who didn't live to see it finished. Every hospital, every school, every road, every idea that changed history. Someone planted it. Someone never sat under it. And yet, the shade came. The question is not whether your actions will matter. The question is whether you are willing to act without seeing the result. Because the greatest version of your life may not be something you experience. It may be something you leave. Plant your trees, even if you'll never sit under them. If this story moved you, leave a like. It helps more people find it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this today. And subscribe, because every week we bring you stories that challenge you to live for something bigger than yourself. The shade always comes. Plant anyway.